Hi, my name is Dani Scantlin. I'm the 2025-2026 Ripley High School Speech and Debate Captain, and in this video we're going to cover how to write an intro. So firstly, what is an intro? An intro is basically where you introduce your topic or prompt if it's something limited prep like impromptu or extemp. In platform speech specifically, which will be the main focus of this video, an intro is typically the first 1 to 2 minutes of the speech. I highly suggest avoiding going over 2 minutes by a lot. At most, it should maybe be 2 minutes 10 seconds. An intro will be made up of the AGD, the link, the statement of significance, and lastly, the roadmap. So, AGD stands for Attention Getting Device. The AGD is basically your hook, and it could be funny or serious, but typically the funnier ones do better. If you're talking about something really serious, either use a personal story that could be funny and connect it to the serious topic, or try to be more dramatic, try to be more sad. Whatever you think you as a personal speaker can do to help exemplify emotion and get your audience engaged with your speech is gonna be what works best for your speech overall. Examples of AGDs can be statistics, questions, personal stories, comparisons, or even pop culture references. Typically, the personal stories, comparisons where you take one thing and compare it to your topic, and pop culture references work the best. Here is an example of an AGD. It uses a pop culture reference and a comparison as well. It uses a pop culture reference in the sense that it's using Scooby-Doo, and then later we're going to see how it compares Scooby-Doo to the topic we're actually going to be talking about in that speech because it's an informative. You can pause the video to read it. So after the AGD, you have the link. The link is how you're going to connect or shift your AGD to your topic. Think of it like a transition from your AGD to what you're going to be talking about. The topic should be introduced at this point if it wasn't in your AGD. You can introduce the topic in your AGD if you're making a joke maybe about the topic. But if you haven't, maybe you're using a story or maybe you're using a comparison, this is where you would add the final part of the comparison or explain how that personal story connects to your topic. Like last time, here's an example of the link. You can pause the video to read it. Following the link, you have the statement of significance. This is where you explain why does what you're talking about matter and what are you talking about. If it wasn't clearly explained in the link, you need to clearly explain what you're talking about in the statement of significance, but you also need to explain why you're talking about is important and why your audience should listen. In oratory and informative, the way you're going to do the statement of significance does change because the purposes of the speeches are different. Oratory, you're trying to persuade them that the problem that you're going to talk about, the topic itself, has a lot of impacts and that they should take the solution or take the action that you present in the final point. So the way you want to handle an oratory statement of significance is explain that your topic's impactful or that the problem itself is problematic. Whereas informative, you should not be persuading your audience at all. The way I like to think about the statement of significance or the thesis of informative, you're not trying to persuade them to take action or that something's bad or something's good. Rather, you're trying to present information and persuade them that what you're talking about is important, that it's something that we should be informed about, that it's something that we should be aware of. You shouldn't be adding your own opinion in informative. You can use examples from your life, but you need to be presenting the facts as they are. If you, again, haven't introduced your topic yet, you really need to do it now. Once again, here's an example of the statement of significance. Lastly, we have the roadmap. The roadmap is basically a preview of what you're going to talk about. Successful roadmaps are brief and catchy. So, for example, if you're talking about something in pop culture, or if your AGD has a certain theme, like baking or even Scooby-Doo, you can make your roadmap themed around that. A roadmap should be framed in a first, second, third order, and other modifiers like next, finally, or lastly can be used. So you want to say, firstly, we're going to talk about this. Next, we're going to talk about that. Before lastly, we're going to, and fill in the blank. You don't have to say talk about. In fact, I wouldn't use talk about or even the same phrase for each one. You can use phrases like, first we're going to look at, secondly we're going to examine, we're going to analyze, we're going to break down. Just explaining what you're going to be talking about without having to say, we're going to talk about this, is a good way to introduce that point of the speech. So here are two examples of roadmaps. The first one is a bit shorter, it's a bit more brief, and it's not themed. It's pretty matter-of-factly because it's talking about a serious topic, that being suicide hotlines, whereas the other one is a bit more lighthearted and themed. It's about Scooby-Doo and communism. It's going to be a bit silly. And the way that that AGD uses the Scooby-Doo theme to its advantage is that it frames the talking points like they're a mystery itself, saying let's gather clues to piece together the basic principles, or we'll set a trap, or even we'll unmask. It's fun and playful while still connecting your topic, communism, to something really outlandish in pop culture, like Scooby-Doo. So, final notes from this video about intros. Intros should be 1 to 2 minutes. They really should not be longer than 2 minutes 10 seconds, because your whole speech isn't an intro to what you're talking about. Your whole speech is going to be analyzing all these different points of your topic, trying to either persuade them or inform them. Intros should hook your audience through the AGD, introduce your topic and explain what you're actually going to talk about, and then briefly outline those talking points. They should also be emotionally engaging. Your audience should feel a certain pull to your topic. Funnier AGDs do typically perform better, but if you're talking about a serious topic, AGDs are a good way to keep your topic lighthearted while still addressing an important issue. For example, with the suicide hotline info, you don't want to be making funny stabs at suicide or something like that in your AGD, but a good way to actually pull in the funniness would be to maybe use a personal story or something relevant to that, or even a comparison explaining something similar to suicide hotlines and then connecting it to suicide hotlines. But if you're talking about something more serious, and want to pull in some drama, you can talk about maybe how many people commit suicide per year and a lack of funding that happens towards suicide hotlines. All in all, this video should help you understand what an intro is, the parts of it, and how to write one. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and watch some of the other videos we have for speech and debate content. Thank you for watching.